I suppose the lesbian, gay, bisexual movement has really developed over the last 30 years, and the trans community have not had the same level of visibility and support. And I really hope that the London Irish LGBT group will provide a safe space for the trans community to meet. Our final speaker is a poet, playwright and novelist. She is said to be Britain's first out lesbian in public. And her first openly lesbian novel, The Microcosm, was published in 1966, at a time when homosexuality was still criminalised in Britain. She is a Fellow of the Royal Society of Literature and of King's College London. Her latest book, In Times Like These, has just been published. We are delighted that she is here with us tonight to celebrate the launch of the group. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Maureen Duffy.
Well, good evening everybody, and thank you in particular to Mr. and Mrs. Mulhall for organising this event, or overseeing this event, and to all the organisers. I've been telling everybody about it, and they're all saying, no, they aren't. I say, yeah, they are. I'm an Irish mongrel, in that I am genetically, by blood, 50% Irish and 50% English. And my Irish heart is romantic and frustrating. My father said he came from Donegal, which is a nice place to come from, whether it was true or not. And he also said that he was a skilled craftsman plasterer, and he once took my mother to see something like this, which he claimed he had done. Now, my mum was a wonderful dancer, and she loved going to dance halls and doing exhibitions, and she was given different partners when she turned up to do her exhibition with. And that night, it was my father. And that occupied her for the next 2 years, until I was born. Now, my father said that he was in the IRA, and that was why he couldn't marry her. Whether that's true or not, he hung his gun on the end of the bed, so that seems like some kind of stamp of authority. And unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, you can really say in retrospect, when I was 2 months old, he peeled the shrimps for my mother one night and said, "Who will peel your shrimps for you, Alana, when I'm gone?" And off he went. So I was brought up by my English mother, and as a child, of course, I felt very equivocal about this absent father who'd left us as a single parent family during the Depression. My mother had TB and so couldn't work. We lived on what is now called benefit and was then called national assistance. We often lived in one room. We moved around, but as I grew older, what really came to be so important to me was Irish literature. We've already heard Yeats mentioned by Bernard, and George Bernard Shaw. I could say O'Casey and James Joyce. The whole litany of Irish literature is a fantastic tradition. English literature is also a fantastic tradition, and I was lucky I inherited them both. So that's my Irish part. I've looked for my father, I've looked for any relatives, I've never found anybody. If anybody has ever heard of a higher Patrick Duffy, alias Paddy, of course, please let me know. So, I grew up in a very working class background. We eventually got a council house, which seemed like a palace. But I had a mother who was passionate about education. She said, it's the one thing they can't take away from you. And so I was always encouraged to read and to go to school. Even when I had a streaming cold, I had to go to school. And eventually, I got myself to university in the days when you didn't have to pay fees, and in fact you were supported with major county awards, as indeed people should be now. And I don't know how you do these things in Ireland, but I hope it's better than here, that's all I can say at the moment. And I knew nothing about homosexuality. I remember having a conversation with my mother once, who knew nothing about it either. And I said, what do you think they do? She said, trying to look terribly calm, I expect it's mutual masturbation. What's masturbation? So, when I found myself, I mean, these days I would have recognised the symptoms. We have moved on. I'm talking about 1960. So, when I began to feel, I thought perhaps it's teaching in an all-girls school. Perhaps that's why I'm fancying about the English mistress. But then I fell in love. And it was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. And I thought, oh, what's this? What's going on? What's happening? What do I do? Who am I? And then I read Simone de Beauvoir, The Second Sex. And I found the section in there where she deals with gayness in women. And I read that and I thought, oh well, that's all right then. I needn't bother anymore, I needn't worry. And from that moment, it was a great relief that I was able to be open. But I was lucky. I was able to be open, A, because women were not criminalised in the UK at that stage, and B, because I was not employed. I had just sold my first television play and given up my teaching job. So I didn't have a job to lose, unlike my first partner, who was sacked when it was discovered we were in a relationship. So that was how I came out, and I wrote 2 novels, one of which reversed the sexes so nobody realised it was actually gay. And then I wrote The Microcosm. And some people said, this is scraping the bottom of the barrel. But in '66, there was a great agitation to decriminalise male homosexuality. And because I was out, I was able to go on television and in public places and speak up for it, because I couldn't be prosecuted. And that was a great thing to be able to do, to feel that you were actually doing something to move things forward. And I'm afraid I've just gone on from there. I should say that I do bring you the very, very best wishes and congratulations from GALHA, which is the LGBT branch of the British Humanist Association. I used to be Alpa's president, which was quite fun, meeting bishops and saying, I am president of Gay Humanists. But since the amalgamation, I'm just an honorary member. But they did very much, the chairman particularly emailed me to say, pleased to give you every good wish and congratulations. And I want to finish by reading two poems, one which is Irish, or about the Irish. Alas, I don't speak Irish. I have a book, Learning Irish by Michael O'Civil. And sometimes I look at it and there are too many letters. But I want to read you about my father. This is a poem called Paternity. On the facing page is a poem entitled Easter 1998 for Liz and Michael Judge, two great friends. Michael, a very fine writer, living in Dublin, and I wrote that poem for him when the Peace Concord was finally signed, and I rang them up, and Michael said, the champagne's nearly gone. But this is about my father and my equivocal feelings about him. Paternity. Well, Dad, with you long dead, or maybe somewhere knocking on a century, I stumble across a late understanding served up by a garrulous taxi driver, Paddy from Sligo, about the old IRA you claimed to be served years ago. That it wasn't just, as we always thought, a con trick to dodge the wedding band you should have fingered my mother with, but a real prohibition. Jesus, you can't marry a prod while you're in the army, if ever. Not then that you wouldn't, but couldn't. And that plasters some of the old wound, shrapnel, slivers in the flesh, leftovers from a long dead scar. And not that I let it bleed me to death, though always sharp to your absent presence, seeing you in strange men on the bus and saying in my head, we don't need you, yet alive to the fables and songs that are half of my heritage. Now I'm glad to be credulous, wanting to believe your part in me wasn't just the dancing deceiver we took you for, slinging his gun from the bedpost, but as well the one who peeled the little brown shrimps for his lover with finicky patience, though he couldn't put his bike back together, and registered my name as your own, so everyone should know I wasn't stillborn. Dad, or Dad, whichever, and wherever you are. And then, because this is a gay gathering, I'm going to read a gay love poem. It's called Perfection. If I sang creation, herding words with no angel guide, except these computer utterances telling us how it all began, spiralling down aeons, to our hands held from mere clouds of dust, some thinner, some thicker, obeying the dictum, perfection doesn't exist. So that gravity pulled the densest, heaviest together, pushed the puny apart, making distance, hydrogen, heat, light, stars. Would I have discovered the first law of love's physics? A force as strong as gravity that drew us together, thinning the world around us until we collided, elaborating this new metaphysic, except that in your arms that other first law doesn't apply. Perfection exists. Thank you.